Points of Departure. 8 true stories about saying goodbye.
It's 4 a.m. in the height of summer. The aroma of coffee spills from the cabin and out onto deck, where my brother and I are coiling coarse ropes in our soft hands. The sun is about to rise in the west. Everything is still and expectant, and a light mist floats delicately on the surface of the river. The boat's engine, loud in the dawn, is an old 2-cylinder diesel that coughs smoke into the air as it starts, and then thumps out its rhythm slow and steady. We cast off from the quayside and slip out of the marina on water that's as flat as a page and the colour of ink. We pass row upon row of plastic yachts tied up to pontoons, each one uglier than the last. The boat we're on, though, this one is called Radiance, and I have just bought her with every penny I possess in the world. She is going to be my home, a beautiful wooden classic made of larch and oak, mahogany and iroko, and bronze. She is 80 years old and still has curves in all the right places. Surrounded by wood worn smooth by the years, we haul up the sails to the squeak and rattle of tackle and blocks. It may be dead calm, no wind, but we have a certain reputation to maintain. And as we depart, we intend to show these modern yachties what a real boat looks like. So we coast downriver. The beat of the engine echoes back at us from each bank. The mist develops, and our surroundings become intangible and elusive, and so does this idea. This dream of living on a little floating home becomes shadowy and vague, and I begin to wonder, what kind of fool is it exactly who would be willing to take their home out into the cold waves of the North Atlantic? A light breeze picks up as we approach the end of the river, and with it comes the salt smell of the open sea. We turn south, and the sails fill with wind, pushing the boat on under its own influence. This is her domain, and she has been out here many more times than I have. I put my faith in her. We switch off the engine, and in this moment I fall in love. The quiet is exquisite. Now the only sounds we hear are the rustle of sails, the creaking rigging, and the gentle slap of waves against the hull. We make another pot of coffee, and my brother fixes us bacon sandwiches. And the smell and taste of these 2 simple things contain greater wealth than that of 1,000 kingdoms. The worries of the land dwindle to nothing as we sail further and further away.
Our relationship wasn't over. It was on hold. After a series of silences, Daniel and I had decided that. As I pull up into the cul-de-sac, lined with identical prefab houses, one of which is Daniel's family home, I remember the phrase, "just for now," passing between us. The boot clicks, and Tiggs, my terrier collie cross, leaps down, stretches out her body and shakes her coat. She barks, chattering to me. We've travelled a long way together from our life in West Wales. The journey has brought us across the peaks of the Cambrian Mountains. The flatlands of suburban Bicester would be Tig's new home. She can't move back to Bristol with me. There's no room in my parents' house. For now, Tiggs would have to walk through football fields and under bypasses, rather than the hill forts and forest tracks that we were used to in Wales. Her nose is swollen from baiting a wasp in the boot of the car. She knows this place. She's been here many times. I imagine a sequence of memories attached to her senses. This is where Daniel's youngest brother lives, with his ball, his endless energy, tidbits of toast and sometimes ice cream on hot summer afternoons. Daniel isn't here. He's still in Wales. Through panes of frosted glass, I can see cartoons, silent, fragmented. I press the doorbell. Daniel's mum comes to the door, and I recall the phrase, "Just for now." Daniel's mum coos at Tiggs. Sound floods the room. The cartoons burst into life. Looney Tunes music romps freely in the background. Daniel's mum, smiling, beckons me in. She warbles, her South African accent cracking. Tiggs, thoughtless, happy, no longer just my dog, is carried off into a throng of children and animals. That she can find a place here so easily makes me feel even more uncomfortable. Daniel's mum, in her blue scrubs, just home from the hospital and still moving, hasn't thought about it once. I can see that I'm still a part of her. She pours me tea and chats idly about the boys, her 3 sons, and work, patience, new regulations, and anything else that comes into her head. I sit, listening quietly, aware that Daniel's brother is now wrestling Tiggs. They are a tangle of limbs and excitement. I feign interest in the tropical fish. Silent, resentful, I hide my features in the blue recesses of the aquarium. The cat, sprawled on top of the fish tank, languidly reaches out for me. I push her cheeks back, and she grabs my arm with her claws. When it's time to leave, Daniel's mum and Tiggs stand at the garden gate. First, I hug Daniel's mum. The smell of surgical disinfectant from the hospital still lingers on her. Tiggs jumps up and I clutch at her, smoothing her coarse hair down as she pushes her wet nose into my ear. I walk away, brushing my hand against the rose bush. The scent releases. My hand prickles with pain. I look back. The garden gate is shut. As my engine bobs to life, I hear Tiggs' frenzied barking. My dog, the dog I rescued. I look across at the house. All I can see is her nose, a black dot moving back and forth under the gate. It's just for now.
It is the middle of the night in Wargrave boarding house. I walk quietly down scuffed corridors and scratched up doorways, marking the decades of boys that have lived here before me. I am leaving school tomorrow. This part of my life is ending. Outside, Eastbourne is sleeping. The sky is dark and overcast. Beachy Head Hill looks over the town, a long, wide road running down it. For years, me and my best friend have wanted to ride it on longboards, to get there at dawn before any traffic. This was our last chance. So I meet my best friend in the pitch-dark laundry room, and together we pull a basket of clothes under a window and clamber softly out into the night, clothes squashing spongy underfoot. We slink through the streets wordless. The clouds soften the breaking dawn like a blanket over Eastbourne, and when the ashy light starts to shine through the clouds, we begin to walk up the hill. We get to the top, and I can see the whole town, laid out in miniature, and the steep black road stretching and shrinking towards it. We look at each other and set our boards on the road, facing down. When we go, don't slow down, he says. There's nothing to slow down for. With anticipation, we roll forwards, and the scrape hiss of the wheels on the black tarmac fills my ears. It changes pitch and rattle from harsh to smooth with the new and old road. My friend speeds out in front of me and he carves left and right, meandering the double road, weaving the white lines. He turns and calls back to me, but his voice is lost to the wind. I shout to him how this is amazing, but with a big grin on his face, he points to his ears and shakes his head. The hill drops steeper and I get faster and faster. My wheels start to shake. The board starts to fishtail. I should slow down. I need to keep balance, but don't bail out now. Just before it gets all too much, the hill levels out and we come speeding out along the seafront. We cruise the flat road and take in the sound of the waves washing the pebbled beach. When I finally slow down and step off my board, my feet buzz from the vibrations.
the first time I've ever left Glasgow Station without Sophie to see me off. A month ago, she would have waited on the platform and waved until the train went out of sight down the line. It was supposed to be a romantic adventure in the Highlands, a long weekend away, just me, her, and all the stars you could possibly count. Somewhere between watching wild deer on the moors and spinning stones across the surface of the loch, Sophie fell ill. She didn't take her medicine. It wasn't long before the mania set in. Sophie is getting worse as we arrive back in Glasgow. It's no warmer here, and Sophie shivers uncontrollably. Her shivers have kept her awake for 2 nights in a row. I carry her tickets for her. The train drops us a short walk from her parents' house. I keep one arm tight around her waist and hold her rucksack in the other. She crushes a quarter of a flapjack between her forefinger and thumb and leaves a breadcrumb trail. She curls up on the front steps with her knees to her chest and her back to the wall. We have no keys to get inside, so we wait for her parents to come home. As luck would have it, there is a nursing home across the street from her house. I put my jacket over Sophie's shoulders and walk her there, our hands clasped tightly together. The nurses across the street feed her chocolate from a big metal tin. I stay with her until her parents arrive outside. As her mother unlocks the front door, her father pulls our hands apart and whisks her upstairs. I'm made to sit in the kitchen and explain the whole ordeal again and again, first to her mother and then to her father once he returns a long time later. When I get to see her again, I find her tucked up under heavy bedclothes. Her face is flushed and dry, and as I look closer, I see her fingers are bloodied and bruised. I have no idea why. I kneel beside the bed and say my goodbyes. Sophie doesn't look at me. Instead, she rolls over and mumbles at me to get out. I leave the house shortly after. I ride the bus to the train station in pitiful silence. I long for her comforting hug, for her reassurance that we'd see each other soon, for her smile of limitless optimism. I have none of these things now. I push my way through the ticket barriers and board the train like I've done so many times before. I take the window seat like I usually do, and still half expect to see her standing on the platform, waving at me frantically. The train lurches forward, and I leave her far behind.
I rush down the steps of the hostel into the neon-pink streets of the sex district. This is San Francisco, and even at 4 a.m, the warm air is thick with club music and the scent of cheap Chinese food. I apologise for my lateness to the taxi driver, but he's unimpressed. I'm just another unreliable backpacker in her 20s. As I'm stuffing my bag into the boot, I catch the eye of an old man smoking a cigarette. He's a character, a bum, a gnarly beatnik in a dusty brown jacket and a hat. Frustratingly unaware of my haste, he makes small talk, asks me where in England I come from. Birmingham, I reply, slamming the boot lid closed and making for my seat. He draws on his cigarette. Which bit of Birmingham? Just outside Solihull, I say. He blows smoke. Ah, Solihull, he repeats in his Californian drawl. The posh bit. I flinch, get in the vehicle and slam the door shut. The taxi sets off for the airport. After 9 months backpacking around North America, San Francisco was supposed to be my last hurrah. It has seemed like such a small city, But now I'm struck by the ocean of glittering lights stretching to a dark horizon. I think of all the things I haven't done. I haven't clung to a climbing cable car. I haven't had shots with beat poets in Vesuvio. My memories of San Francisco will be of illness. Blinding white sunlight and the psychedelic carpet pattern between my dorm room and the toilet. We drive through the lilac dawn, up hills and down. We cross Golden Gate Bridge. This is the only time I've done so, and I'm leaving. On the other side, the cinematic palm tree streets give way to neighbourhoods where the houses are packed in like sardines, couches on the porches. There are miles of this, more and more burnt-out cars and smashed-up windows as we approach the airport. I think back to my first day here, the headache and the pizza, and the hippies in that green square doing Tai Chi and smoking weed, and me, anonymous and mysterious, or so I thought. It turns out that even here, on the shores of the Pacific, I'm still just a brummie from the posh part of town. I'm flying with American Airlines to New York before heading home. My seat is in the centre of the plane, far from the windows, so the only clue of where it is I'm leaving is the white morning sunlight tilting through the cabin as we lift into the air.
The day has been long. It is late, but not dark. The streets are bathed in the artificial glow of street lamps. I am tired and hungry, and have been travelling for nearly 12 hours. My room is a little boxy, and I've yet to unpack. I noticed a Chinese on the way down. Maybe I'll get an egg fried rice with sweet and sour chicken balls. You can't get proper takeaways back home on the Isles of Scilly. I am 18, in New Cross, London, and this is my first night as a student at Goldsmiths University. I am a little apprehensive. Yesterday night was altogether different, the boys all gathering together for one final almighty piss-up. A boozy send-off for those like myself who won't be returning to the islands until the Christmas holidays. My best mate Michael was off to Nottingham, a bit of a bloody smart-ass, A's all round. If only I'd done as well, maybe I'd be heading off to somewhere a little more salubrious, rather than this run-down area of south-east London. Michael had never stopped mentioning all summer that the ratio of girls to guys in Nottingham was 7-1. We of course ended up down the Porth Crescent Disco, the usual classics playing, Summer of '69, Echo Beach. Most of the local guys hugged the bar, while our little group kept on hitting the sticky dance floor. I was feeling rough as rats this morning, and the whir from the helicopter's rotors as we left Scilly gave an added edge to my hangover. Luckily, a fry-up in a Penzance greasy spoon and an insipid cup of milky tea brought me back to some kind of life. On the train up to London, Michael and I talked about the summer on Scilly. It had been good. Plenty of boat trips, days on the beach, and of course lots of female talent. There was one girl, Emma, who I was seeing for a while. She was 24, an older woman, and living near Heathrow. I think I'll give her a call when I get settled. Later, on the Underground, I had to squeeze my hefty luggage through some tight turnstiles. At one point the bloody things got stuck, which was so embarrassing. A ticket guy had to release the barriers. There was a lot of under-the-breath tutting going on. By the time I reached New Cross Station, it was getting dark, and having only been there once before, I had little idea where I was heading. I asked a few people if they could point me in the right direction. Some just ignored me, while others pretended to be deaf or invisible. It was frustrating. I noticed quite a lot of older street kids lurking in alleyways, often in packs of 4s and 5s. Maybe though they were just the same ones, it was difficult to tell with all the dizzy circling round I'd been doing. I still had my carefree island head on, so never saw myself as an easy target for mugging. After many wrong turns and double backs, I finally found my digs in a grimy 70s housing block. I am tired and in need of a shower, but first, that Chinese.
She was gone. I'm pacing around the kitchen, no longer able to stand or walk normally. My roommate, blissful, unknowing, is lounging on the sofa. The kettle starts rumbling. My breathing becomes heavier, and every muscle seems to tighten. My throat has the worst of it. Maybe because I am about to tell someone, and my body's letting me know it's a bad idea. I sit on the sofa next to him, looking blankly ahead. I sit uncomfortably. Aside from the small talk, the room is quiet, but my brain feels like it's about to implode. I break. My ex-girlfriend just killed herself. I almost scream it at him. My roommate shouts, "What?" in such shock that absurdly, I almost start to laugh. I cry instead. He embraces me fiercely and everything starts to dissolve. I play out the last few hours in my head, piecing them together in different ways, trying to understand. My mum's phone call, my stomach dropping as the tone of conversation changed. My first thought, it's Grandma. Her sighing before saying, "Beth's died." She was found in her university room, suspended. My mum was so far away, but we shared a moment of silence, the phone feeling heavy in my hand. I become aware that other roommates have gathered around. I start to shiver and someone covers me in a blanket. The tea sits on the table forgotten, and I am handed a much stronger drink. I hold it shakily, hardly tasting it at all. Everyone is unsure what to do around me. I want them to leave. I haven't told them to. It is too quiet. Between odd words of comfort, the silence stretches out unbearably. The evening carries on in some strained normality. I play music, skipping more songs than usual. I put on the TV, but my eyes ache. I make another cup of tea, something habitual, but that too goes cold. Some memory jars in my brain. Something my mother had said. Well, at least implied. There is a letter waiting for me.
As my overloaded silver Clio descends the hill to cross the dam, I catch that glimpse of rusty Dartmoor to the east and hear myself draw a deep and steadying breath. It's like I'm on some dividing line, a border. One side of this dam is about to be my past, a 20-year chapter of it. Yet any second now, I'll drive into a new life, 50 years old and heading for university. It seems like only yesterday my son made the same leap. For the past frantic week, I've been packing boxes with dented saucepans, nostalgic teapots, favourite mugs, and pressing the lids tightly shut. I'm saying goodbye to Oak Cottage, An old cob-walled house perched on top of a Devonshire hill, surrounded by fields full of milk-scented Guernseys in summer and swollen maternal sheep in winter. I moved there when my son still sat in his buggy, watched his tumbling fat little legs whir on pedals and gradually stretch long into skinny blue jeans. My wild child. The boxes are packed in my car. Back seats flattened for space. Potted geraniums, roses and mint spread their heady vapours over black bin bags bursting with clothes, bedding and shoes. Somehow my bewildered, trembling greyhound is wedged in there as well, between two speakers and more boxes of books. My life has shrunk to a carload. Destination, a rented room by the sea. It's a liberating experience, I've told people. My son says, just go for it. I stood in his bare bedroom this morning, stared at the huge white dolphin he painted across one wall on a sea of royal blue. I could hear our jackdaws busy scrabbling about behind the eaves. I've grown to respect these dedicated parents, have shared their losses many times. Parcels of loose pink skin fallen down by the doorstep like deflated balloons. I closed his door and listened to each creak of the stairs one last time. I pulled the back door shut, firm. I drove over to Rosie's farm to say goodbye. I saw her last framed in my mirror, waving and calling the collies back to her side. My hand waved until she was out of sight. This is the moment, then. I've been driving slowly across the dam, counting down the concrete sections of the road. I put my foot down. Going, gone.
Points of Departure was written and read by Lewis Alsop, Jed Bullock, Anna Kathenka, Sarah Cave, Rufus Craze, Matthew Jackson, Mel Johnson and Kieran Nightingale from the School of Writing and Journalism at Falmouth University. The sound engineer was Jem Mackay. Points of Departure was produced by Paul Dodgson.